Boy, this is a lot, so we need to work. Tell me if it's too much. Monterey Bay Clusters Network is something that Monterey has done, I think Monterey County has done at least twice in my 18, 20 years around here. And essentially it's what are our clusters, what are our groups, and agriculture and tourism clearly are to, it took us to the second round of clusters to convince them that education and research was one of the clusters, and I think that became part of the discussion last time around. And I always get great hope when that starts, but it's still, it hits a plateau and then it doesn't go anywhere. And I think what would be interesting to do with this group is to have a conversation, try to figure out why we can't get over that hump. We get a lot of great start, we have a lot of potential, we have a lot of passion, we just can't press that. And the last thing that is actually going on now, and I think some of you know a little bit about it, but there's an effort to create regional venture funds across the state of California, and the Economic Development Administration out of Washington is banking that this might be something that would work. It's different and it's new, and it took us years to convince EDA to try to look at economic development in a different way. That it wasn't all about, what is that called, relocation, retention, all the old style of economic development. This was a different thing. So the Golden Capital Network is working on that. I think they're somewhere in the region. I'm not quite sure what happened to them. At one point at the university, when I was at UCSC, we were heavily engaged in that, but the campus is no longer doing that, I'm pretty sure. We call it the Crescent, or you can call it the Coast. We called it the Crescent because we were trying to figure out, actually we sat in a room one day and said, we're research triangle park. That's what we're like. They have 3 universities, they drew lines and they made it a triangle. And so we started drawing the dots around the bay and said, well, what is it? Oh, it's a half circle. And we sort of went through it and someone said Crescent. And I guess it's stuff. But there's over 25 institutions in doing marine research and beyond, these languages and things that you know down the Monterey side of the bay. In the marine sciences alone, there's over 2,000 scientists and staff working in the marine sciences. And that doesn't pick up all the stuff going on at the Navy School or the Defense Language Institute. All that is off the table. It's just in the marine sciences. We have the public, private, military. The numbers on here for money was probably about 6 or 7 years ago. So I don't know what today's numbers are. I haven't done the survey, but that's a pretty good chunk of money. It's not as much as agriculture, it's not as much as tourism, but it is a good chunk of money and talent in the area. If you have questions, please stop me. We started, as I said, Fort Ord, I'm going to go into the MBES Center a little bit because I think as you hear what we were trying to do, there's pieces of it that become applicable to conversations today. We started in '91, took about 3 years to change federal law to get land given to the 2 universities for economic development, which meant we could have private industry on the land. The old style of transferring federal lands would only let us do education. And we wanted to have industry, particularly on the UC lands. Our idea was to create a community of innovation, or some might call it a research park, but to create a place that all of the institutions around the bay, all of our communities, could have a place where you could build a critical mass of activity. And I said the city of Monterey was one of our biggest allies in that effort because they really saw the value of the region and worked with all of us around the bay to try to make that happen. We did work with Salinas as well, and I think Dennis was dynamite. I mean, he's got the right vision. We took over many years 3 strategies. We said, first of all, if this is moving into an innovation and information age, then we really need to focus on our intellectual resource. And we started drawing the dots around the bay and we said, well, do you have that many and what's there? And we sort of went in and surveyed to find out what was there, but we also added more dots. We brought more institutions to the region. We looked at where you could, if we were going to expand opportunities, where could you do that? You could do a little bit along Marine Lab. You remember here in the city some of that activity there. Fort Ord clearly was this huge piece of land, and some of us, particularly from driving down from Santa Cruz, thought it wasn't just Marine and the Seaside's piece of land. It was all of ours. It was our regional piece of land. And then Watsonville, and looking at the different places around the bay, there aren't a lot of places that you can expand much of activity, but those are some of them. And the last bullet is looking at enterprise development programs, which meant in our terminology at the time, what does it take to build that ecosystem for innovation? You need money, you need talent, all those things. So what could we be doing to build networks and find the money and start to bring that to the table? Carl Pieser at the time said, Laura, we've got a petri dish and it's full of nutrients, and they're fantastic nutrients, and our job is to keep firing the spark, and it's going to take off. And someday it'll take off, and we don't know which day, and it'll take off in a direction we probably can't anticipate. But when it does, it'll be what we thought it was going to be. And I still think that's the case. More so than ever, actually. On this, I'm going to go through those strategies really quickly, but the intellectual network, we formed the consortium, we started bringing large-scale research projects to that. We'd go back to Washington, bring back money, and it was on everything from groundwater remediation to ocean sensing, which is a program that continues across the state now. We brought other agencies to the region. We helped get the Fish and Game Facility at Long Marine Lab built, 6 years getting the National Marine Fisheries out of Tiburon relocated here, 12 years bringing USGS folks from Menlo Park into Santa Cruz. That was part of the strategy. In fact, Santa Cruz was weak on the numbers of dots, so that was one of the reasons we spent a lot of time up here, because there were a lot of dots on the other side of the bay, so we wanted to balance it a little bit. Then we were building these institutional collaborations, because each of us are small, each of these institutions are small, so we wanted to make ourselves appear bigger and really get more robust. And then we looked at the core competencies, meaning we went into the institutions and figured out actually what they do. Who's there, what kind of talent is at the front, and where are the commercialization opportunities? And I mean, what can transfer out into policy or into industry, sort of, it's great to do research, it's wonderful research, but what do you do with it in many cases? So how does it fire the economy, and how does it help us solve some of the issues we need to solve? This is an old picture of the Crescent, and you'll see down at the bottom there's a lot of dots going on in Monterey, so we were adding dots up at the north end of the bay. Surely UCSC is a large one of those dots, but it really is helpful to have USGS and Marine Fisheries and others here. It builds more strength. And Moss Landing, as you can see, and in your brochure, if you open your brochure for a minute, and then you have to put it away. Unfold it up. You can open it all the way out. First of all, you see the region and the dots and things. But when you open it all the way out, and this has been done 8 years or so ago. If you open it one more fold, you start to see the names of all the institutions in there. So it was intended to be, if you turn it over on the other side, it's almost a directory of who's here. And I think Monterey County, the clusters effort, has done something like this similar more recently, but focused on Monterey County, I believe, and not around the Crescent. This was focused on marine institutions because they're the ones who footed the bill. We put the money up at MBES and they all bought pieces of this. But it could be much broader and pick up again the language and the other activities in the region. You may know this already, but the expertise in the region covers everything from biotech and marine to astronomy to homeland security and international business and language skills. It really is a mix of really interesting talent, and where I think, what do they call that, the convergence of those points is where some really interesting and innovative ideas can come. And what I think I've learned in all these years is that that doesn't happen easily, that convergence or that intersection of these different disciplines. I think there's something called, I would call it a facilitator or a catalyst, and I think it's a person or an organization that really has to continue to work to bring those people together, because in our research institutions, it's a whole lot easier to stay in your lab and do your own work. So that was some of the function that MBES played, which helped to be a catalyzer of those activities. These are the institutions around the bay. You've got it on your list, some of these. In fact, there'll be a test. Jeremy, you have to answer it first. Of all the institutions on this list. So look quickly, because they're going to go through. Was that too fast? So we've got the higher ed institutions, and those all we picked up out into Hardin, but this doesn't even go out into the Hollister area and San Benito. I mean, there's a whole slew that we can start to pull together. The military institutes. How many of you are familiar with the military installations down a little bit? They're fantastic. If you haven't had a tour of the Naval Postgraduate School as part of this exercise you're doing, Spencer, it would be, there are some wonderful things going on. And regardless how you feel about our military, there's some talent down there. And it's a lot of good people who want to help make this intersection work. Defense Language Institute, the Naval Research Lab, Fleet Numerical. Do you know about Fleet Numerical? It's, they use great computers. They have big computers, and what they do is they actually crunch, I would guess, weather data and send it to our troops all over the world in real time. And they've got all this secure stuff coming down, and they're sending all this stuff out over the lines. And so they're making sure our troops all over the world, at sea or wherever, have what they need as far as the weather data. After they've used that, like yesterday, that data is not so secure anymore.